In 1945, the United States emerged from World War II as the most powerful military in human history. Korea, Stalemate. Vietnam, Withdrawal. Afghanistan, 20 years. The Taliban back in power, the weak US troops left. Iraq, still on fire. The most expensive military on earth, $850 billion a year, hasn't won a lasting war in 80 years. And the real answer isn't strategy, it isn't politics, it's money. Chapter 1. The Machine That Needs to Eat. On January 17, 1961, President Dwight Eisenhower gave his farewell address to the American people. Eisenhower was a five-star general, supreme commander of Allied forces in World War II, not a man given to paranoia, not a man given to exaggeration. In that speech, he said something that most presidents never say out loud. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. He coined the term that day, military-industrial complex. And he wasn't warning about a foreign enemy, he was warning about something he'd watched being built from the inside. Here's what he saw. During World War II, the US government had to build a war machine almost from scratch. It contracted with private manufacturers, Boeing, Lockheed, General Dynamics, Raytheon, to produce planes, ships, bombs, and weapons at a scale the world had never seen. These companies grew enormous. They hired hundreds of thousands of workers. They built factories across dozens of states. They became deeply embedded in the American economy. When the war ended, those companies didn't disappear. They lobbied. They diversified. They hired retired generals and admirals as executives. They placed former employees inside the Pentagon. They opened offices in Washington and learned exactly how defense budgets were approved. By 1961, the year Eisenhower spoke, the system was fully operational. The Cold War then gave it the perfect cover, a permanent enemy that could never be defeated in a conventional sense. No surrender ceremony, no VJ Day, just an endless, expensive standoff that justified every budget request, every new weapon system, every expansion of the intelligence apparatus. The machine had found its ideal operating environment, a threat real enough to be credible, diffuse enough to never actually be resolved. And it had one fundamental requirement. It needed wars to survive, not to win them, just to fight them. Chapter 2. What winning would actually cost. Think about what happens when a war ends decisively. Contracts get canceled, production lines shut down, the argument for next year's defense budget weakens, thousands of jobs disappear, stock prices drop, lobbyists lose leverage. Now think about what happens when a war continues indefinitely. Every year, Congress approves a new defense budget, and every year, the ongoing conflict is a central justification. New weapon systems get tested in live combat, which is the best possible advertisement for selling them to allied nations. Contractors receive cost-plus contracts, meaning the more a project costs, the more profits they make. Let that sink in for a moment. In virtually every other industry, going over budget is a failure. It costs you the next contract. In defense procurement, going over budget is built into the model. If a program runs 3 years late and twice as expensive as estimated, the contractor's profit margin is calculated on the higher number. The incentive to be efficient doesn't exist. The incentive to expand scope and extend timeless does. Then there's the F-35. The F-35 fighter jet program cost $1.7 trillion over its development lifetime, the most expensive weapons program in history. It was plagued with delays and technical failures for decades. By any standard procurement rule, it should have been canceled multiple times. It wasn't, because its components were manufactured across 45 US states. 45, which means virtually every senator and congressman had a Lockheed supplier in their district. Every single one of them voted to keep it alive. That's not a bug in the system. That's the design. Chapter 3. The Revolving Door. There's a term for the movement of people between military leadership, government, and defense contractors, the revolving door. And the numbers are staggering. A 2018 study by the Project on Government Oversight tracked nearly 400 senior officials and military officers who left their positions over a 5-year period. More than 90% of them went to work for defense contractors, lobbyists, or defense consultants within 2 years of leaving. 90%. Take General James Mattis. He retired from the Marine Corps in 2013. Within 2 years, he was on the board of General Dynamics, a defense contractor pulling in close to $40 billion a year in revenue. He was later appointed Secretary of Defense, which required a congressional waiver because the law mandates a 7-year cooling-off period before a retired general can run the Pentagon. Congress waived it in 2 days. Mattis isn't even the most striking example. Lloyd Austin served as a 4-star Army general, then joined the board of Raytheon Technologies. He was then appointed Secretary of Defense by President Biden in 2021, making him directly responsible for overseeing contracts with the company whose board he just left. He needed the same congressional waiver as Mattis. It passed just as quickly. During Austin's tenure as Secretary of Defense, Raytheon posted record revenues. This is not unique to Mattis. It is a standard career path, and the consequence is structural, baked into every decision at every level of the system. The general who ends a war retires. The general who manages a long, complex, ongoing operation becomes essential, becomes valuable, gets the board seat. Winning is a career-limiting move. Chapter 4. Follow the money in real time. You don't have to take any of this as theory. You can watch it happen in real time. In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Within 48 hours, the stocks of Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics all rose sharply. And then Raytheon CEO Greg Hayes got on an earnings call with investors and said this: "I fully expect we'll see some benefit from it." He was talking about the war, publicly, on a recorded call, to shareholders. The U.S. committed tens of billions in military aid to Ukraine, mostly weapons system and ammunition produced by American defense contractors. Because foreign military aid is rarely cash, it is contracts. American taxpayers fund the purchase of American weapons from American companies shipped abroad. It is simultaneously foreign policy, military strategy, and corporate subsidy. The same pattern. Afghanistan. Over 20 years, the U.S. spent $2.3 trillion on that war. Roughly half went directly to defense contractors and private military companies. The Afghan security forces the U.S. spent 2 decades training collapsed in 11 days after American troops withdrew. The weapons and vehicles left behind, worth an estimated $80 billion, were captured by the Taliban. By any military definition, total failure. By financial definition, every contract was fulfilled, every invoice was paid. The official U.S. government watchdog, the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, spent years documenting exactly where the money went. Bases built in locations soldiers never used. Equipment delivered that no Afghan soldier was trained to operate. Ghost soldiers on payroll, men who existed only on paper. Their salaries pocketed by commanders up the chain. The auditors kept filing reports. The contracts kept getting renewed. The waste wasn't a bug. It was background noise that nobody in the system had any financial reason to fix. Chapter 5. Why this isn't a conspiracy. This needs to be said clearly. This is not a claim that shadowy figures gather in rooms and decide to lose wars on purpose. The reality is more mundane and far from troubling. It is a system of incentives, thousands of individual rational decisions, each made in self-interest, that collectively produce an outcome no single person designed, but everyone inside benefits from. The contractor wants revenue. The general wants post-retirement employment. The senator wants jobs in their state. The president wants to avoid being blamed for losing a war on their watch. The think tank wants continued relevance. The media wants an ongoing story. None of them need to conspire. And crucially, none of them see themselves as part of the problem. The contractor genuinely believes in the product. The general genuinely believes in national security. The senator genuinely believes in jobs for his constituents. The system isn't built on cynicism. It's built on people doing their jobs inside a structure that produces a catastrophic outcome as a quiet, unremarkable side effect. The system rewards prolonged conflict automatically. It punishes resolution. Eisenhower saw this in 1961 and said so plainly. A handful of senators and journalists raised the alarm in the decades since. The machine absorbed the criticism and continued. The US military is extraordinary at specific things: power projection, air superiority, logistics, technology. It is built to fight and sustain, not to resolve and exit. Victory, in the traditional sense, was never the primary design requirement. Payoff in tease. So, here's a real answer: why the most powerful military in history hasn't won a lasting war since 1945. It's not incompetence. It's not cowardice. It's not that the enemies were too clever or the terrain too difficult. Though sometimes those things were true. It's that winning decisively, permanently, and quickly is the one outcome that serves nobody inside the system that funds, manages, and profits from American military power. The wars don't end because the wars aren't supposed to end. Eisenhower said it 60 years ago. The numbers say it today. The career trajectories of the people running the machine say it every year. The only question left is, if not winning, then what exactly is the goal? That question has an answer, and the people with that answer aren't hiding. They're filing quarterly earning reports, sitting on congressional committees, and collecting seven-figure consulting fees in plain sight. It runs through a network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and weapons deals most people have never heard of. We'll get into that next week.